Welcome to the GGVR Study Lab's thesis preparation video. In this video we're going to look at how to format elements in your thesis. Now what are thesis elements? Well, they are figures, tables, code and equations. And under the figures we can have photos, plots, diagrams, screenshots. So all of these are called figures. Basically everything that is not a code, equation or a table is a figure. Now to format one figure or one large image, you should use top and bottom wrapping. So this ensures that the text is wrapped to the top of the image and to the bottom of the image. And there is no text on the sides of the image. So when you click on an image, you will get this layout options pop up and you click on the top and bottom wrapping. Next, you should enable, if they're not already enabled, the alignment guides. So there is this align menu and there is this use alignment guides button or checkbox. So you check it. And now you can move your image left and right and it will snap to this alignment guideline. So this will ensure that your image will be in the center of the page. When you have a single large image, it must be aligned to the center. Next, all figures have captions. So this is one of those tools that is unavailable in Google Docs. So this is one of the reasons why we use Word, because it has those tools. So to add a caption, you right click on the image and there is this insert caption button. So you press it and now you have this pop-up and there is this label. And all the figures should have the label figure. There are also captions for tables, which we'll look at later. But when you're working with an image, you have the figure label. Or if it's an Estonian thesis, you have joonis. So you select this figure label. The numbering and the labels are automatic. So when you have clicked on this figure label, it will write figure, let's say number 6. This 6 is automatic. It will automatically count how many figures you have before this particular figure and number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and this will be 6. If you add another figure in the middle, then it will renumber all the other figures automatically. After the automatic label, you should write a short descriptive caption. So this is the actual caption of the image. There you should write what is on the image or how to read the image. For example, on this image we have a regular red Honda Civic. But you might have a more complicated image, some kind of a diagram or a graph, and you might need to provide some information on how to read or what to pay attention to on a particular image. So the caption is where you write that. Now, when you have the image and its caption, you should check the margins. So there should be a larger margin before the image and the preceding text. There should be another larger margin after the caption and the subsequent text. And there should be a smaller margin between the caption and the image itself. The reasoning here is that things that are logically grouped together should be visually closer as well. So the caption is about the image. So the image and the caption should be closer to each other than they are to the text preceding it or succeeding it. It might be that you need to configure these margins yourself. So look visually at where your image is, where is the text, where is the caption, and try to figure out are the things that are logically together visually also closer. Now all the figures you have must be cross-referenced. This is again something that we couldn't do in Google Docs, but now in Word it's much simpler. So the figures you have, they always illustrate something that you describe in the text. This means that you should cross-reference your figure in the text. For example, here we have this situation where the Honda Civic, and then in brackets we have C figure 6, and then brackets end, is one of the most iconic and long-running compact cars and so on. So to add this cross-reference, you write those brackets and you write C or depicted on or some kind of a preceding text to the actual cross-reference. And then you click References Cross-Reference button. When you click on the cross-reference button, you get this pop-up. And on this pop-up, you can cross-reference, well, different things in your thesis. But right now, we are trying to cross-reference a figure. So under reference type, you select figure. You insert the reference only label and number. And then you click the caption. So right now we have figure 6, regular red Honda Civic. So you click here and you insert. And it will insert this link using the label, figure, and the number 6. So see figure 6. and this is also automatic. So if, let's say, you add more figures or images somewhere, you add another figure between figures 2 and 3, and now this is no longer figure 6, it becomes figure 7, then Word automatically updates the label number in the caption, but also in the cross-reference. So you don't have to manually keep track of are these numbers correct. If this cross-reference is used, then this will be connected to the actual label, actual number, actual object that you're cross-referencing, and then Word knows to update both the cross-reference and the label. And this is also an automatically linked text. When the reader clicks on it, they will be taken to the figure. This is useful for when your figure is maybe far away from the text. Usually you should have your figures close by to their cross-references because they're describing something in the text, so it's easier for the reader to look at the image right where the text is. But sometimes you might want to cross-reference an image again several pages later. So there, the reader might have forgotten what was that figure, where was it, what was the figure 4, for example, or figure 6, when they're already several pages ahead. Then they can click on the cross-reference and they will be taken to the actual image. Now, because this is an automatic text, then there might be an issue when you want to change that text. In an English thesis, you usually don't want to change it, but in an Estonian thesis, you might want to have something like joonisel kuus, not joonis kuus. So you might need to change the actual word that is used there. The issue with that is that, well, Word will override it. Whatever you write here, when you export your PDF or Word updates the figure labels and cross-references, then it will override it with the default label and number. If you really do want to change that text, you can use Ctrl and F11. When you select your cross-reference and press Ctrl F11, then this will lock the text. So then you can change it to whatever you want, and when Word is updating the labels and cross-references, it will not change your changed cross-reference. The issue with that, of course, is that if you change it and now you add a new image and the numbering changes, you need to go and manually also update all the numbers. So when you really do want to change this text, do it at the very end where you know that none of the numbers change and everything is how it will be. Next, what if you have a small image? So you don't always have to put an image in the middle of the page with this top and bottom wrapping. If your image is good with a width that is somewhere in between half and third of a page, then you can use square wrapping. This means that, well, if your image is over here and its width from the end of the text is somewhere between like half of this width or 1/3 somewhere over here, then you can use square wrapping, and square wrapping wraps the text to all sides of the image. So it will also place text to the left of the image over here. And this can look very nice if you have these small images accompanying the text. Now with square wrapping, you need to look at the left margin or the right margin depending on where you put your image, to the left side or the right side. And there should be again this larger margin between the image and the text to the left of it or to the right of it. You can set a specific margin for your image in the layout menu. So for example here I've set it to be 6 mm from the left and from the right. So whatever is on the left, for example here we have some text on the left, it will keep this specific distance. This is useful when you have multiple these square wrapped images, so you want to set the same number for the left margin or right margin for all of them. So with margins you have some larger margin over to the left of it, some larger margin below the caption, and a smaller margin or less space between the caption and the image itself. And well, of course, you also have a caption. So it is still a figure, it still has a label and a number and a caption, and that label and the number is cross-referenced from the text. Please do make sure that these margins look good and the text on the left doesn't like intrude on the image. So if this margin is very small, then the text is kind of conflicting with the image, it kind of runs into the image visually, and this looks bad. And also the text will be closer to the image than the caption, and then this breaks the rule that objects that are logically grouped together should be visually grouped together as well. Please look at these images, these figures, regardless if they're box wrapped or top and bottom wrapped, and make sure that they're grouped visually as they're grouped logically. You can also have two images, so two images side by side. You can have one figure on the left and one figure on the right. Now to format those two images in this way, you can use an invisible table. So you can add a table and you make its border invisible. And now you can put one image on this one table column or cell and another image to the second column and the captions below the images as well. And sometimes this looks very good when we have, let's say, a figure that depicts the car before and a figure that depicts the car after our thesis work, let's say, if our thesis work was renovating this car. So we can really see the before and after image. So those two images are kind of good to look at together. However, they can also be considered as one image. So you could put those two images onto one image and one figure and have just one caption under them. And then that caption should say that the car before is on the left and the car after is on the right. So the caption should describe how to read this figure, what exactly is on the left and what is on the right. You can have even more complicated figures or images. So for example, here we have 4 different images under one caption. So this is figure 6, famous sports cars, and now we have these small labels here. We have this A, B, C and D. And in the caption we have described that A is Lamborghini, B is Dodge Viper, C is Ford Mustang and D is Ferrari. And everyone can see, okay, we have the letter D here, this is Ferrari. So again, this caption describes how to read this image. Also note that there is larger space between the caption and the text than there is between the caption and the image. So visually we can see that those two rows are grouped together with the image. The second row is also about the image, not the text after it. Using these multiple images and labeling them, let's say A, B, C, D, is very good to show, let's say, 4 different elements that are somehow good to view together, or maybe there's a sequence of events. So maybe you're trying to illustrate some game mechanic and you have A, first the player does this, B, the player does a second thing, and C, the player does a third thing. So you can illustrate this sequence of events, these frames or these screenshots of the player doing something in a sequence and having them in a single figure. But of course, your caption should describe what is on the A image, what is on the B, and what is on the C. When you're adding those A, B, C, D, please make sure that when you're adding the label here, that it's actually readable. So we will look at this in a later video in the next stage as well. But let's say that I would use the labels with gray color. So that would be a problem because, well, the background is also gray. So if I would put a gray A on a gray background, then it would be very hard to visually read that A. Or if I would have like a white sky on one of the images and I would put a white label on the white sky, well, that's also hard to read. Or we might have some high frequency patterns on the image, and well, putting a letter on a high frequency pattern is also problematic because then there's lots of visual noise and the letter isn't that readable. So when you're putting those labels on the images, make sure that they look nice and are readable. Next we will look at tables. So here's an example of a table. And the first thing you might notice is that the tables have captions above them. So the figures we saw before had a caption below the figure, but tables have a caption above them. So over here we have a table and there is table 1. The difference is in formatting figures and tables in a thesis document, and this caption is above the table. Secondly, as mentioned before, tables have 1.0 line spacing. If you have 1.5 line spacing here, then the text is not going to be aligned in the middle of the table cell. So that's why 1.0 is better, because it will align it in the middle of the cell without leaving some kind of an empty gap in the bottom of the cell. So 1.0 is good, and usually in tables you don't have like more than one row of text. Sometimes you do, but you should try to avoid it. If possible, each cell or each row should have like one row of text. And work on really formatting those tables, so make sure that they are nice. So for example, here we have these header cells or header row and header column. So in this example, they are bold. It will show that, well, in this column we have content. In this column we have caption placement. In this row we are talking about figures, here tables and here code. So one tip here is that make sure that the header cells are visually distinguishable from the actual content cells. And you can use colors to highlight some cells that the reader should pay close attention to. For example, here this cell is highlighted to show that tables have caption placement above the table. So it's important that the reader really looks at this blue cell, that the caption should be above the table, so it's highlighted in this example. And you can use these colors to have semantical meanings as well. For example, maybe you discovered some problems with your software, you have a table of 10 different issues, and now you have analyzed these issues, and maybe some of those are low priority issues, medium priority issues, and high priority issues. So you can color the low, medium, and high values with different backgrounds, or maybe even the entire row with a different background to show the priority. And coloring those tables will really give that information to the reader in a much faster way than having them to read like all of the text to get the idea. Next, equations. Now, equations are a bit tricky to format in Word. If you have a lot of equations, then it's actually better to use a LaTeX template, because their equations are much simpler to format. But you can do it in Word. So in Word, to format an equation, you should first show the rulers. So if you go to View and check this ruler, then it will give you this ruler on the top of the page. You can use this ruler to add tabs. And you should add 2 tabs. One in the center over here, and one will be added to the right in a moment. But when you click on the ruler, it will add a tab. And on this pop-up, you can say that this is a center alignment tab. So this is where you will align your equation on the page, on that tab. And here we have added the center alignment tab and a right alignment tab to the right. So when you have this center tab, you can now place your cursor in the middle of the page, and you can add content here that will be center aligned to the page over here. This right alignment tab, this is where we will add the equation number. So you need those 2 tabs for the equation itself and for the number. Next, if you go to the Insert menu, there is this Equation button. So this is the Word's built-in tool for adding equations. So you use this menu to add your equation and make sure that your cursor is at the center tab that we just added. So this is where the equation will be added. When the equation is added, we want to add a caption. And for an equation, we go to References and we insert a caption. And the caption we insert to the right tab. So we make sure that the cursor is on the right over here, and we insert the caption. And now this caption, well, the label of that caption doesn't really matter. In this particular example, we are using this võrrand, which means equation in Estonian, but it doesn't really matter what this label is, because we will never show this label. And we check on this exclude label from caption checkbox. This is just to group the different equations we have under some keyword, but we never show that keyword. So we add this equation or võrrand caption. And unfortunately, well, we have to add the round brackets manually. However, the number here is a caption and is automatic. If we add new equations or new võrrands to our document, then these numbers are updated automatically. It might also happen that we might need to move these tabs a bit to make sure that this caption is in a neat position. But here we can see that we have an equation in the center of the page and this caption or this number on the right of the equation. And of course, because it's an element in the thesis, it needs to be cross-referenced, so we can cross-reference that equation just like we did before. So we insert cross-reference, but now we pick the equation label or whatever keyword we used, and we pick the number of the equation we want to cross-reference. And this number 1, well, this will be automatically linked to that number 1, and if we add new equations to our document, then that number is kept updated. Lastly, we have code. So what happens if we want to add code examples to our thesis? Well, let's say we just want to reference some, let's say, variables or some simple lines of code in the thesis text. For that, we can use this code inline style. It doesn't actually matter if we use this code inline or some other programming font like Courier or Consolas. The main thing is that we use a specific programming font to indicate that this is a code, or this references to a variable in the code, or this is a line of code that is like actual code, not the thesis text. So it's visually distinguished from the thesis text. The code inline style is Consolas 12 points. If you feel that this is perhaps too big compared to the Times New Roman that is accompanying this, then feel free to change this to, let's say, 11 point. So you make it a bit smaller, if that is visually more pleasing to you. There is no rule that it has to be 12 point Consolas, but it should be visually distinguishable from the words and text that are accompanying it. But if you have a larger section of code, let's say this add function that adds A and B together, then use this code block style. So this code block style creates this block around the code. And feel free to color this code so it will be more easier to read for the reader. But still it will be sectioned in this box. So this is this code block. And there isn't like a caption for the code, but this code block is also part of the text. So you should write your text in a corresponding way. For example, here we have this for example colon, and then we have this code that is now talked about in the text preceding it. But don't add a caption to it. Only the figures and tables have these explicit captions, and equations have these caption numbers. But code and code blocks doesn't have neither, so they're part of the text. So the takeaway from this video is that, well, everything that's not a table, equation or code is a figure. Sometimes students label some things like illustrations or screenshots. I did it myself as well. But to be correct, then all of these things should be labeled with a single label called figure or joonis. Then neatly align the figures and their captions. So everything that's logically together should also be visually together. And make sure it looks good. And every figure and table must be cross-referenced. So if you have a figure or a table, it is illustrating something in the text, and it should be cross-referenced from the text.